Hey everyone, this is What If Fan bringing you another part of What If copy system in Naruto. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Please make sure to support the creator. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, a quick update, the story What If There Was a Different Luffy is going on hold soon, as we have almost caught up with the author. So once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the next project should be on this channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if Ichigo awoke his true powers? What if becoming a mangaka in One Piece world? What if Reborn as Gohan in future timeline? I will be setting up a poll for this, so please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next on the channel. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 91. The Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Shin closed his eyes. After using the advanced replication card to copy Ryota's Mangekyo Sharingan, his eyes stung. He could feel the immense ocular power surging within him, pushing past his limits. It was like staying up for days without sleep. After about a minute, a soothing coolness spread through his eyes. His Mangekyo Sharingan's pattern shifted, evolving into the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. His ocular power, already greater than that of most Mangekyo Sharingan users, increased tenfold. It felt limitless. Shin, are you alright? Kushina and Makoto asked worriedly, seeing him suddenly close his eyes. I'm fine, Shin said with a smile, reassuring them. He was more than fine. He felt amazing. The evolution of his Sharingan had brought about a significant transformation. His already vast chakra reserves increased further. He even felt physically stronger. This was understandable. The evolution of the Sharingan enhanced the user's chakra and physical abilities. And his perfect sage body synergized perfectly with the Sharingan. With both the perfect sage body and the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, he might even be able to awaken the Rinnegan on his own. He didn't know if he needed Indra and Azura's chakra for that, though. If he did, it would be troublesome. But it was too early to think about that. He had just awakened the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the Rinnegan was still a distant goal. Amaterasu and Kagetsuchi. The same as Sasuke Uchihas. Shin muttered to himself. He had copied Ryota's Mangekyo Sharingan, including his abilities. Ryota's abilities were Amaterasu and Kagetsuchi. Shin was a bit disappointed. They weren't bad abilities, but they weren't what he had hoped for. I thought everyone's Mangekyo Sharingan abilities were unique. Why does this guy have the same ones as Sasuke? Shin was frustrated. He had been hoping for some unique and powerful abilities. The Sharingan was a reflection of the heart. Perhaps Ryota and Sasuke had similar desires. Shin, what are you muttering about? That guy's leaving. Kushina's words snapped him out of his thoughts. Shin glanced at Ryota, who was indeed leaving. He had achieved his goal, there was no need to attack Ryota. But he wasn't going to let Ryota go that easily. They had a history, after all. Shin had a good memory. Can't let him escape. Follow him. Shin said to Kushina and Makoto. But we haven't finished eating. Kushina complained. We can eat later. We'll have something even better after this. Let's go. Shin dragged Kushina along, and Makoto followed. Shin wasn't trying to hide, and Ryota, being cautious, noticed them. More flies buzzing around, huh? Ryota scoffed, then headed towards the forest outside the village. He was being hunted by many, he didn't want to cause a commotion. He would deal with them in the forest. Ryota waited in the forest. Shin didn't bother hiding. With the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, there was no need to sneak around to deal with Ryota. That would be embarrassing. 3 brats? I think I've seen you before. Ryota glared at Shin, Kushina, and Makoto. Shin, I want revenge, Kushina said. She hadn't forgotten how Ryota had intimidated her with his killing intent. She was vindictive. This was her chance for revenge. Okay, I'll help you, Shin agreed. Ryota's strongest asset was his Mangekyo Sharingan, but it was nothing to Shin. How effective could the Mangekyo Sharingan be when suppressed by the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan? Besides, Shin already knew Ryota's abilities. Know yourself, know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Shin, be careful of his Mangekyo Sharingan abilities, Makoto warned. She didn't know that Shin already knew Ryota's abilities. Fire Style, Fireball Jutsu. A massive fireball, over 10 meters in diameter, shot towards them. Ryota had mastered this jutsu. The fireball collided with an ice wall. Shin's ice wall was far stronger than Ryota's fireball jutsu. The flames melted the ice slightly, but it would take 10 more fireballs to break through. Ice release? Aren't you an Uzumaki? Ryota was surprised. He vaguely remembered Shin and Kushina being Uzumaki. Can't an Uzumaki use ice release? An Uzumaki can even use the Sharingan. Shin activated his 3-tomo Sharingan. Ryota was stunned. Ice release was one thing, but the Sharingan? That was impossible. The Sharingan was a bloodline limit, a Kekkei Genkai. It could be transplanted, but a transplanted Sharingan couldn't be deactivated. Ryota knew this. Shin's Sharingan wasn't transplanted, it was his own. How can you have the Sharingan? Ryota asked. Why should I answer that? Ryota didn't press further. There was no point. He activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. He was serious now. Shin's display of ice release and the Sharingan had forced him to take Shin seriously. Ryota's Mangekyo Sharingan had a pattern of 3 connected sickles, similar to Obito's. Makoto felt a wave of pressure. Chapter 92, Using Your Own Jutsu Against You. Shin, his Mangekyo Sharingan is completely different from yours. Kushina exclaimed, staring at Ryota's eyes. Every Mangekyo Sharingan is unique. Just like no 2 snowflakes are the same. Shin explained. The abilities might be the same, but the pattern was always unique. Well, except for the one Shin copied. His system could create perfect replicas. You have the Mangekyo Sharingan too? Ryota overheard Kushina's exclamation and stared at Shin in disbelief. A 3-tomo Sharingan at his age was shocking enough, but the Mangekyo Sharingan? Ryota couldn't believe it. As for the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, he didn't even know what that was. No, mine is more advanced. The eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. It's not the same as yours. The difference is greater than that between a 3-tomo Sharingan and the Mangekyo Sharingan. The perfect Susanoo can level a mountain with a single swing. The Susanoo you can use is nothing compared to that. So you have the Mangekyo Sharingan too. Ryota's killing intent surged, ignoring Shin's claim of a more advanced Sharingan. To him, the Mangekyo Sharingan was the ultimate evolution of the Sharingan. There was nothing beyond it. I bet you're thinking of killing me and taking my eyes, right? Is your vision starting to blur? How did you know? Ryota, who had been about to attack, stopped, his eyes wide with surprise. It's the side effect of the Mangekyo Sharingan. You must have overused its abilities. If you didn't use the Mangekyo Sharingan's abilities and only used it as a normal Sharingan, you wouldn't go blind. But who could resist using the Mangekyo Sharingan's powers? And its abilities were powerful, at least A-rank level. You seem to know a lot about the Mangekyo Sharingan, Ryota said, his killing intent intensifying. More than you. Ryota attacked without hesitation, unleashing Amaterasu. Amaterasu created inextinguishable black flames. It didn't require hand seals, couldn't be extinguished with water, could burn in a vacuum, and wouldn't disappear until its target was completely incinerated. It seemed powerful, but its biggest flaw was that it had never killed anyone in the original story. Well, except for White Zetsu, but those weren't human. And it was the same this time. The moment Ryota unleashed Amaterasu, Shin activated his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and used Kagetsuchi. Kagetsuchi could control the shape of the Amaterasu flames. Ryota's flames were now under Shin's control. Kagetsuchi? You have Kagetsuchi too? Ryota's face turned grim. If he had known Shin also had Kagetsuchi, he wouldn't have used Amaterasu. Shin didn't answer. He shaped the Amaterasu flames into a blade and slashed at Ryota. If this blade connected, Ryota would be finished. Amaterasu might not have killed anyone in the original story, but that didn't mean it was weak. The people it was used against were simply too strong. If Amaterasu could instantly kill anyone, there would be no story. Ryota also used Kagetsuchi, trying to regain control of the flames. But his Mangekyo Sharingan was no match for Shin's eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Slash! Ryota's arm was severed, and Amaterasu flames engulfed his body. The severed arm was quickly incinerated, but Ryota managed to extinguish the flames on his body. Tears of blood streamed from his eyes. Unlike Shin, using his Mangekyo Sharingan abilities came at a cost. Just like Itachi Uchiha, every time he used his Mangekyo Sharingan, he would bleed from his eyes. Ryota's vision blurred further, but that didn't matter. He had lost an arm. Using your own jutsu against you. Not bad. Shin smiled. Mikoto, see? This is the consequence of using the Mangekyo Sharingan's abilities. It's a double-edged sword. Shin said this to warn Mikoto, to prevent her from overusing her Mangekyo Sharingan when she awakened it. The more she used it, the faster she would go blind. Mikoto nodded. She hadn't understood the side effects before, seeing Shin use his Mangekyo Sharingan without any problems. Shin had mentioned the side effects, but she hadn't witnessed them firsthand. Now she had. Your Mangekyo Sharingan can evolve? Ryota stared at Shin, his eyes filled with disbelief. Seeing Shin's more complex Sharingan pattern, he was starting to believe it. He could also feel the pressure, the overwhelming ocular power. His own paled in comparison. You're already a dead man. You don't need to know that much, Shin said calmly. Some people were alive, but they were already dead. Ryota was one of them. Shin had decided to kill him. With Shin's strength, Ryota was no match for him. Ryota was only Quasi-Kage level, his strength boosted by his Mangekyo Sharingan. Chapter 93, The Power of the Perfect Susanoo. Shin looked at Ryota with cold eyes. Ryota was enraged. Did this brat really think he had him cornered? Susanoo. Ryota roared, activating his Mangekyo Sharingan's ultimate ability. Having lost an arm, he had no choice but to use Susanoo. He gritted his teeth as pain surged through his body. This was the side effect of overusing the Mangekyo Sharingan. Not only did his eyes bleed, but his entire body ached. The Susanoo was powerful, but using it with the Mangekyo Sharingan came at a steep price. Itachi Uchiha's illness was partly due to his overuse of the Mangekyo Sharingan. The eternal Mangekyo Sharingan could use the Susanoo without any side effects, but using it with the regular Mangekyo Sharingan was like burning away one's lifespan. The Susanoo was a life-consuming jutsu. It devoured not only the enemy's life force but also the user's. Unless you had the Sage Body, that is. The Sage Body was truly versatile. With a strong body, you could do anything. The Sharingan's abilities might seem impressive, but they were ultimately inferior to the Sage Body. Indra Otsutsuki couldn't defeat Azura Otsutsuki. Madara Uchiha couldn't defeat Hashirama Senju. Sasuke Uchiha couldn't defeat Naruto Uzumaki. Ryota didn't have the Sage Body, not even an ordinary one. He was paying the price with his life force. A skeletal, armored warrior materialized, reaching a height of almost 50 meters. That Susanoo is pathetic. Let me show you what a real Susanoo looks like. Shin looked at the incomplete Susanoo, then activated his own. He didn't need the perfect Susanoo to defeat Ryota, but he wanted to test its power. The Susanoo had a lot of potential. The perfect Susanoo wasn't even its final form. Hagoromo Otsutsuki's Susanoo was comparable in size to the Ten-Tails. Shin's black Susanoo towered over 100 meters tall. Shin stood within the black crystal on its forehead. He wasn't alone. Kushina and Makoto were also there. That Susanoo was already impressive, but compared to yours, it's like a child. Kushina said, staring at Ryota's Susanoo, which barely reached Shin's Susanoo's waist. That's an incomplete Susanoo. I told you, the Mangekyo Sharingan can't manifest the true Susanoo. Shin grinned. He wondered what Ryota was thinking now. I bet he's feeling despair, Makoto said. Probably. I would be, Kushina agreed. Ryota's small Susanoo was no match for Shin's. They weren't even on the same level. Ryota was indeed feeling despair. He hadn't expected the Susanoo to be capable of reaching such a size. He had thought his own Susanoo was already at its limit. Shin's Susanoo drew a sword from its back. The perfect Susanoo had wings and could fly. Let's test the power of the perfect Susanoo. Shin locked onto Ryota and swung his sword. The blade was longer than Ryota's Susanoo. The air rippled from the force of the attack. Ryota's Susanoo drew two curved swords, trying to block Shin's attack. Don't overestimate yourself. The perfect Susanoo isn't just about size. Shin felt Ryota was being naive. He clearly didn't understand the true power of the perfect Susanoo. Shin's sword sliced through Ryota's swords like butter, then cleaved through Ryota's Susanoo. There was no resistance. Ryota's Susanoo was split in two. The shockwave rippled outwards, splitting the forest. Basically, Madara's iconic scene where he unleashed his perfect Susanoo against the five Kage and obliterated mountains. Kushina and Makoto stared at the destruction in awe. Was this the power of the perfect Susanoo? Shin wasn't surprised. The Susanoo was incredibly powerful, and he hadn't even used his full strength. Is Uchiha Ryota dead? Makoto asked, looking at the massive chasm Shin had created. No, he's still alive, Shin said. He's still alive? After that attack? Kushina was surprised. Was Ryota that strong? No, I let him live. I missed on purpose. Shin had deliberately aimed off-center, sparing Ryota's life. But he had still almost killed Ryota. If Ryota hadn't reacted quickly, he would be dead. Shin wasn't sparing Ryota out of kindness. He wanted Ryota's Mangekyo Sharingan. He deactivated his Susanoo, then used Yamatsu Hirasaka to teleport in front of the fleeing Ryota. Trying to run away? That's not very polite, Shin said calmly. What do you want? Ryota asked, his eyes filled with blood and tears. He had just used the Susanoo, his vision was blurry. He could barely see Shin. His body ached from the strain of using the Susanoo, and his chakra was almost depleted. Although his Susanoo had been destroyed, the cost had already been paid. To kill you and take your eyes, Shin said bluntly. Ryota's Mangekyo Sharingan was nearing blindness, but it was still valuable. If it weren't for his eyes, Shin would have killed him with the Susanoo. You want my Mangekyo Sharingan? Ryota's face twisted in anger. Chapter 94, Harvesting a Pair of Mangekyo Sharingan. You want my Mangekyo Sharingan? Dream on. I'd rather destroy them than give them to you. Ryota glared at Shin with hatred. Destroy them? Go ahead then. Unless you don't have the guts. Shin looked at Ryota calmly. He didn't believe Ryota would destroy his own eyes. He was probably still hoping to escape. Shin, did you catch him? Kushina and Makoto arrived, using the body flicker jutsu. Ryota's eyes flashed as he saw them. He lunged at the girls, hoping to take them hostage. Alas, he was underestimating them. If he were at full strength, Kushina and Makoto wouldn't stand a chance against him, even together. But Ryota was exhausted. His ocular power was almost depleted, and his Mangekyo Sharingan was barely active. His chakra was also low from using the Susanoo. He had lost an arm and couldn't even form hand seals to use ninjutsu. His current strength was less than that of an average jonin. Kushina and Makoto threw kunai at Ryota, each with an explosive tag attached. Boom! Ryota was forced back by the explosions. Fire style, Great Dragon Fire Jutsu. Makoto unleashed a fire dragon, shattering the surrounding trees. Damn it! Ryota cursed. These kids were strong. At their age, he had only been a chunin. He couldn't use jutsu, so he dodged the fire dragon. But the attack's range was wide. He was caught in the blast, suffering burns and crashing to the ground. Rasengan. Kushina appeared before him, a Rasengan aimed at his chest. The Rasengan pierced through Ryota's body, creating a gaping hole. Blood splattered the ground. Ryota's eyes widened in shock. Kushina quickly retreated, wary of a last-ditch attack. That blow should have destroyed his heart, but she wasn't taking any chances. Shin and Tsunade had taught her to be cautious. He's dead. Shin approached and confirmed Ryota's death. His heart had been destroyed. Even Madara Uchiha would die from that. Well, the current Madara, not the Six Paths Madara. Six Paths Madara was practically immortal. Even if his heart was destroyed, he could regenerate. Ryota's eyes were wide open, filled with regret. He hadn't even gotten his revenge on Danzo. And he regretted not destroying his eyes. This might be a bit gruesome. You can look away if you want, Shin said to Kushina and Makoto. Gruesome? Kushina looked at him, puzzled. Yeah, his Mangekyo Sharingan might be almost depleted, but it's still valuable. Kushina and Makoto understood. He was going to take Ryota's eyes. What's so gruesome about that? We'll watch. Kushina didn't think it was a big deal. They had seen worse on the battlefield. Fine. Shin didn't argue. He removed Ryota's eyes and placed them in a jar filled with saline solution. A pair of Mangekyo Sharingan. Shin was pleased. He wouldn't admit that this was one of the reasons he had killed Ryota. He looked at Ryota's mangled body, then sealed it in a scroll. You're not even letting the body go? Makoto said, surprised. I'm not letting it go. I'm recycling. It might be useful later, Shin retorted. He had initially planned to incinerate the body, but he changed his mind. Ryota's body could be used for the Edo Tensei. The Edo Tensei required the target's DNA and a living sacrifice. It was a cruel jutsu, a testament to the second Hokage's ruthlessness. Let's go, Shin said. Shin, I killed him. I killed an S-rank missing nin. Kushina said excitedly as they left. Don't get too excited, Kushina. If Shin hadn't weakened him, you wouldn't have stood a chance, Makoto said. Makoto, shouldn't you be praising me? Kushina glared at Makoto, then asked suspiciously, are you jealous? There's nothing to be jealous of. I'm just trying to keep you grounded, Makoto said. Makoto, do you think I'm the type to get a big head? Yes. Shin answered before Makoto could. I'm not talking to either of you anymore. Kushina stomped off ahead, leaving Shin and Makoto behind. Shin and Makoto exchanged amused glances. Kushina, seeing this, slowed down and walked between them. Are we going back now? Makoto asked Shin. Yeah, we came here for Ryota. Now that he's dealt with, let's go back. Back to the Land of Rain. I don't like that place, Kushina grumbled. The gloomy weather was depressing. Even the people of the Land of Rain hated it. Chapter 95, Return to the Battlefield, discussion between Hanzo and the third Kazekage. 2 days later, Shin and his team returned to the Land of Rain. Since the last battle, there had only been minor skirmishes between Konoha and the Suniname forces. These skirmishes involved small teams of shinobi disrupting supply lines and assassinating key personnel. Danzo had left the Suna front and gone to the IWA front, where Hiruzen was struggling. Hiruzen, despite his strength, was having a hard time against the third Tsuchikage, Anoki. Anoki, despite his small stature, was a powerful shinobi. He also had the Keki Toda, dust release, which could disintegrate anything it touched. And he had the support of Rashi, the Four-Tails Jinchuriki. Rashi and Inoki might not get along, but they were united against Konoha. Hiruzen couldn't handle it, so he had sent for Danzo and put Tsukumo Hatake in charge of the Suna front. Shin and his team didn't see Tsunade or Konan when they returned. They must be at the medical tent. At the medical tent, Shin found Konan. Shin and you're back. Konan's eyes lit up, and she ran towards Shin. She only sees Shin. How heartless, Makoto said with a pout. I even taught you how to refine chakra, Konan. You're so ungrateful, Kushina added. Makoto Nichin, Kushina Nichin. Konan greeted them sweetly, then went back to Shin, making Kushina even more jealous. You're back. What mission were you on? Tsunade emerged from the medical tent. Shin hadn't told her where he was going. Nothing much. Just dealt with a missing Nin. Anything happen here? Nothing major. Suna and AIM have only been sending small teams to harass us. No major battles. Tsunade shook her head, then looked at Shin curiously. He had time to deal with a missing Nin? Since I'm here, I might as well practice my medical ninjutsu. Shin said. He hadn't had a chance to use the mystical palm jutsu since learning it from Tsunade. Now was the perfect opportunity. There were plenty of injured shinobi here. Don't do anything reckless, Tsunade warned. Don't worry. You don't think I'll kill them with the mystical palm jutsu, do you? 2 months passed. Shin celebrated another birthday, he was 11 now. The system gifted him a common replication card, which he used to copy the physique of a taijutsu master, further enhancing his physical abilities. Shin had a dream, to defeat Six Paths Madara with taijutsu. With the system's help, it wasn't just a dream, it was a real possibility. Perhaps in the future, he would find this dream too small. During those 2 months, there were dozens of skirmishes between Konoha and the Suna AIM forces. Konoha won every time. And Hanzo was practically traumatized by Shin. Shin had defeated him so many times that Hanzo was now terrified of him. Suna was still holding on, refusing to surrender. The cost of surrender was too high. As for Amage Cure, if even Suna couldn't afford to surrender, they definitely couldn't. But thanks to their alliance with Amage Cure, they had the advantage of familiarity with the terrain. Do you have a plan? We don't want to die with you. Hanzo confronted the third Kazekage. His tone was harsh. He blamed the Kazekage for dragging him into this mess. But it wasn't entirely the Kazekage's fault, Hanzo had been tempted by the rewards offered. I sent a message to Inoki, but that old fox said they're struggling themselves and can't spare any forces. The Kazekage said angrily. According to the intel, Inoki was currently overwhelming Konoha. They were far from struggling. He simply didn't want to help Suna. Their alliance was just a verbal agreement, it could be broken at any time. Hanzo glared at the Kazekage. This Kazekage was too naive. He shouldn't have joined this war for a bit of profit. Now he was stuck. Don't you have any other plans? Hanzo asked. If the Kazekage couldn't come up with a viable plan, Hanzo would have to prepare for Amage Cure's withdrawal. Our sealing team has finally released Bunpoku from that seal. He can rejoin the battle now. Do you think one Jinchuriki can defeat Konoha? Have you forgotten how he was captured in the first place? Hanzo's frown deepened. This Kazekage was unreliable. Ebizo has sent a letter to Kumogakure, inviting them to join us. If Kumo joins the war, Konoha will be forced to divide their forces. Hanzo hadn't expected the Kazekage to try and enlist Kumo's help. But would it work? The Kage weren't idiots. Could Suna really convince Kumo to attack Konoha? The third Raikage wouldn't do it without a good reason. What could Suna possibly offer? How confident are you that you can convince the third Raikage? Hanzo asked. This was important. It would determine his next move. I'm 80% sure I can convince Kumo to join the war, the Kazekage said confidently. Hanzo was skeptical, but he chose to believe him for now. After Hanzo left, the Kazekage sighed. 80%? He didn't even have 20% confidence. But he knew that if he told the truth, Hanzo would have second thoughts. So he had to act confident. He had successfully deceived Hanzo for now. But after Hanzo left, the Kazekage started to worry. Defeating Konoha was proving to be difficult. He didn't have any good options. Chapter 96, Practicing Sage Mode. Nawaki, what a surprise to see you on the battlefield. Shin was surprised to see Nawaki at the logistics base. It had been a while. I'm here to escort supplies. I'm so jealous of you, getting to stay on the battlefield. Nawaki looked at Shin with envy. What's there to be envious about? Don't you know how dangerous it is? People die every day. Go take a look at the medical tent. It's full of injured shinobi. Shin was speechless. What was there to be envious about? If he wasn't strong, he would avoid the battlefield at all costs. Nawaki, on the other hand, was weak and yet eager to join the fight. Nawaki, why are you doing this kind of mission? Escorting supplies is dangerous, maybe even more so than fighting. Shin was friends with Nawaki, and they were practically family, considering Tsunade. He didn't want Nawaki to die like in the original story. Shouldn't a shinobi grow through trials? What's a little danger? Nawaki said. That's a good attitude, but you should save that speech for your sister. Shin pointed at Tsunade, who was approaching with a frown. Nawaki, what are you doing here? Tsunade demanded. You guys talk. I'm going to train. Shin ignored Nawaki's pleading look and left. He'd rather train than watch Tsunade lecture Nawaki. He went to the forest where he usually trained. Kushina, Makoto, and Konan were already there. Shin didn't disturb them. He created 1,000 shadow clones and sent them to practice ninjutsu. Some were practicing the jutsu they already knew, while others were developing new ones. Shin himself started researching Sage Mode. To learn Sage Mode, he had to be able to sense natural energy. This wasn't difficult for him. His perfect sage body made it easy to sense natural energy. He had sensed it within half an hour. But it had been a month since then, and he still hadn't mastered Sage Mode. Do I really need to go to one of the 3 Sage regions to learn this? Shin frowned. Without guidance, relying solely on self-study, it was proving to be difficult. And he couldn't practice recklessly. Sage Mode training was dangerous. To master Sage Mode, he had to balance 3 energies within his body: physical energy, spiritual energy, and natural energy. Each energy had to occupy 1/3 of his total energy to activate Sage Mode. If natural energy exceeded 1/3, he would be consumed by nature. If it was less than 1/3, he couldn't activate Sage Mode. This delicate balance was difficult to achieve, and he couldn't use shadow clones to practice. Even he was struggling, his clones wouldn't be able to do it. He carefully absorbed natural energy, afraid of being consumed. His perfect sage body had a natural affinity for natural energy, so absorption wasn't the problem. The challenge was in balancing the 3 energies. Shin focused, trying to merge the 3 energies. He failed. He hadn't absorbed enough natural energy. I'll have to take a risk. He created a shadow clone and instructed it to wake him up if he started to lose control. He had been hesitant to absorb too much natural energy before, but now he was willing to take the risk. As long as he stopped in time, he wouldn't be consumed by nature. And as a precaution, he had a shadow clone watching over him. He tried again and failed. This time, he had absorbed too much natural energy. Thankfully, he stopped in time and wasn't affected. But he had learned something valuable. He realized that even if he failed, as long as he stopped in time, there was no danger. He continued experimenting, learning from his mistakes. Finally, before nightfall, he successfully entered Sage Mode. But his Sage Mode was still flawed.
It took him 3 minutes to gather enough natural energy to activate it.
And he couldn't maintain it for long. It was a far cry from Hashirama Senju's Sage Mode, which could be activated instantaneously and maintained indefinitely.
I'll refine it later.
Sage Mode was powerful, worth the effort. Senjutsu and the Six Paths power were probably the strongest forces in the shinobi world.
The fact that Senjutsu was effective against the Ten Tails Jinchuriki was enough to motivate Shin. Unlike Naruto, who struggled to absorb natural energy, Shin found it easy. Perfecting Sage Mode would be easier for him. "Shin, dinner's ready," Kushina called out. "Coming."
Shin dispelled his clones. The influx of memories and experiences made his head spin.
He instinctively activated his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. "I can't create that many clones anymore. It's too much."
After a few minutes, he recovered, but he felt mentally exhausted. The Shadow Clone Jutsu was a great way to train in ninjutsu, but it wasn't for everyone.
Shin felt he was strong enough now.
There was no need to push himself so hard. His current strength was undoubtedly beyond Kage level.
He might not be as strong as Hashirama Senju, but he was probably close to Madara Uchiha without the Rinnegan. With this strength, he could dominate the entire shinobi world. Chapter 97, Discouraging Nawaki. This is a feast. Looks like Konoha sent some good supplies this time. Shin was surprised by the spread Makoto had prepared. There were 8 dishes in total. "What are you talking about?" "Makoto and I found these ingredients in the forest with Konan after training," Kushina said.
"Oh, that's impressive.
"Here, have some more meat."
Shin placed some meat in their bowls.
"Where's Nawaki?
Did he leave already?"
Shin asked Tsunade.
"No, his team went to see their sensei."
Tsunade shook her head. Nawaki had gone to see Orochimaru.
She could guess his intentions. He wanted to stay on the battlefield.
But that was impossible. She was sure Orochimaru wouldn't allow it.
Shin nodded, then dropped the subject.
After dinner, he went to rest. Using shadow clones to train in ninjutsu was mentally exhausting. He needed to recover.
Perhaps because his Sharingan had evolved into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, his mental recovery speed had increased. After a night's sleep, he felt refreshed. He ate the breakfast Makoto had prepared, then decided to continue his training. But just as he was about to leave, Nawaki came looking for him.
Seeing Nawaki's ingratiating smile, Shin took a step back. "Nawaki, do you need a favor?" "Yeah, how did you know?" Nawaki looked at Shin in surprise. "It's obvious. It's practically written all over your face." "What is it?"
"Nothing too difficult, though."
"I can't help with that."
If it was a simple request, he would help, but if it was complicated or troublesome, he'd have to refuse.
"I want you to convince Sis. I went to see Orochimaru sensei yesterday, and he said he'd let me stay on the battlefield if Sis agrees." "I can't do that." "Sorry." Shin turned to leave. "Wait. You're my only hope," Nawaki pleaded. "First, Tsunade will never agree. Second, I don't think you should stay on the battlefield." "Why not? You, Kushina, and Makoto can stay. Why can't I?" Nawaki argued. "Because you're weak. You'd be cannon fodder on the battlefield. Do you want to die?"
Shin felt like Nawaki was an idiot.
Did he really think the battlefield was a playground? "Don't underestimate me, Shin. I've gotten a lot stronger," Nawaki said confidently. Nawaki had indeed improved recently and was a bit overconfident.
That was why he wanted to stay on the battlefield.
"Really? Then let me give you a reality check.
If you can last 1 minute against me, I'll convince Tsunade.
And I guarantee she'll agree. How about that?" "Shin, are you looking down on me?" Nawaki glared at Shin. "Don't get cocky. Even if you were 10 times stronger, you wouldn't be able to do it. I suggest you give up." You said it yourself. Don't forget your promise. Nawaki suppressed his dissatisfaction. He saw this as an opportunity to stay on the battlefield. Don't worry, I keep my promises. Come on, attack me. I don't have time to waste. Then I won't hold back. Nawaki immediately started weaving hand seals. Too slow. I could have killed you a dozen times by now. Shin grabbed Nawaki's wrist and twisted it. Nawaki couldn't even form hand seals anymore. Trying to use ninjutsu at close range? Don't you know taijutsu is more effective? Shin, let go of me. You're going to break my arm. Nawaki gritted his teeth. Shin released him. Go back, Nawaki. This isn't the place for you. No. That doesn't count. Let's do it again. Nawaki, I don't have time to play with you.
But Nawaki had already attacked, throwing a punch at Shin. Shin could see that Nawaki hadn't trained much in taijutsu. His punches were clumsy and predictable. Before Nawaki's fist could connect, Shin sent him flying with a kick. He hadn't used much force, but it was still enough to hurt. See, Nawaki? You can't even block a single attack from me. Your chances of survival on the battlefield are 0. If you really want to go, you might as well kill yourself now. Shin's words were harsh, but he had a reason. He had to discourage Nawaki, or he might sneak off to the battlefield. Nawaki was indeed discouraged. His newfound confidence had been shattered. Shin wasn't worried about him, though. Nawaki was similar to Naruto, he'd recover quickly. Nawaki got up, dusted himself off, and left dejectedly. What happened to him? Kushina and Makoto had just arrived and saw Nawaki's dejected figure. He wanted to stay on the battlefield and asked me to convince Tsunade. I gave him a reality check. He should give up on that idea for now. Shin shook his head, then went to their usual training spot with Kushina and Makoto. Konan wasn't with them. She had gone to the medical tent with Tsunade. Shin had finally mastered Sage Mode yesterday. He tried activating it a few times. 3 tomo appeared on his forehead, and red markings spread across his face. He felt like he was entering Sage Mode faster now. Was it just his imagination? He practiced Sage Mode, Taijutsu, and Kenjutsu, while his shadow clones focused on developing and practicing ninjutsu. Time flew by. It was soon lunchtime. Back at the tent, they found Nawaki and his teammates, Hayashi and Kai, waiting for them. Shin, we came to say goodbye. We're returning to Konoha, Nawaki said. That's good. Nawaki, come here. I have something for you. Shin called Nawaki over and used the transcription seal on him. This was to prevent him from dying like in the original story. Chapter 98, Kirigakure joins the war. Nawaki left the battlefield, but the stalemate between Konoha and the Tsunade forces continued. Konoha had the upper hand, but only because of Shin. Without him, they would be losing. So, the situation remained tense. Konoha didn't dare attack, and neither did Suna and AIM. Meanwhile, at the Konoha IWA front, the situation had stabilized after Danzo's arrival. But then, another disaster struck. Kirigakure, the hidden village in the land of water, declared war on Konoha. Hiruzen almost tore his hair out when he heard the news. Konoha was already facing 3 villages, 2 great villages and Amagakure. Now Kiri was joining? Konoha couldn't handle this. While Hiruzen was panicking, the 3rd Kazekage, the 3rd Tsuchikage, and Hanzo were ecstatic. Hanzo even went to the Kazekage to ask if he had invited Kiri to join the war. The Kazekage's answer was vague, neither confirming nor denying. Shin was surprised when he heard the news. In the original story, Kiri hadn't participated in the Second Shinobi World War. Was this another butterfly effect caused by him? He was right. Kiri's involvement was directly related to him. He had infiltrated Kirigakure, rampaged with his Susanoo, killed hundreds of their shinobi, stolen their forbidden scroll, and even made off with a large sum of money.
Although Kiri had identified the culprit, they couldn't capture Uchiha Ryota.
This caused unrest within the village.
The third Mizukage was desperate. He decided to divert attention by declaring war on Konoha.
He claimed it was to force Konoha to hand over Ryota, but his true motive was to shift the focus away from his failure to protect the Forbidden Scroll. If he didn't do something, his position as Mizukage would be in jeopardy. And with Konoha facing multiple enemies, it was the perfect opportunity to take advantage of the situation. As expected, after he declared war on Konoha, no one cared about the stolen Forbidden Scroll anymore. The Mizukage personally led a force of 4,000 Kiri shinobi to attack the Land of Fire.
Hiruzen was forced to send reinforcements to defend against them. He sent Hamura Mitokado and Koharu Utatane, the two elders. They weren't as senile as Danzo yet and were still capable fighters. With their leadership, the Konoha forces managed to hold back Kiri's attack for now. This is putting a lot of pressure on Konoha. And Kumogakure hasn't even made a move yet. They had to be wary of Kumo. They were ambitious. If Konoha showed any signs of weakness, the third Raikage would definitely seize the opportunity to attack. He might not just take a bite, he might try to swallow the entire Land of Fire whole. Shin sighed.
He had hoped to obtain the Divine Replication card without lifting a finger, but it seemed that wasn't going to happen.
No matter what, Konoha has to win. His mission was to ensure Konoha's victory.
The reward was a Divine Replication card. If he failed, he wouldn't get the card.
He couldn't be complacent anymore. Konoha might actually lose. Kumo hasn't attacked yet.
I wonder if they'll do the same as in the original story and attack IWA. In the original story, during the First Shinobi World War, IWA had been attacked by Kumo while fighting Konoha, forcing them to abandon their fight against Konoha to deal with Kumo. But the current war was different.
There was no telling what would happen. Perhaps Kumo would attack Konoha instead. After all, Konoha was surrounded by enemies. Kumo might seize the opportunity to strike. What are you thinking about? Kushina nudged Shin, snapping him out of his thoughts. Shin, are you worried about Konoha? Mikoto asked. Yeah, things are looking grim. Looks like it's time for me, the savior, Uzumaki Shin, to step in.
Shin said with a smile. Despite the unexpected turn of events, he wasn't worried. With his current strength, he could take on all 4 hidden villages at once.
You're not a savior. You're a demon lord. Kushina thought of Shin's perfect Susanoo. That black monstrosity was the embodiment of destruction. Thwack! That's for being a smart aleck. Shin flicked Kushina's forehead. Shin, you meanie.
Kushina glared at him, tears welling up in her eyes.
That flick had hurt. Kushina, learn your lesson. Remember to say nice things from now on, Mikoto said with a smile. Mikoto, are you laughing at me? Mikoto tried to suppress her laughter, but she couldn't help but smile. She admitted it, she was laughing at Kushina. Mikoto, I'll get you back for this. Kushina threatened. Sorry, Kushina, you'll never get the chance. We'll see about that. Here, have an apple. It's rare to find fruit on the battlefield. Shin handed Kushina a large apple. You think you can appease me with a measly apple? Kushina took the apple anyway. Fruit was indeed a rare treat on the battlefield. Shin had used Yamatsu Hirasaka to buy these apples from the Land of Rivers. Hey, where are you going? Kushina asked as Shin left the tent. I'm going to the medical tent to practice medical ninjutsu. Want to come? Shin asked Kushina and Mikoto. Sure, why not? I want to learn medical ninjutsu too, Kushina agreed, following Shin. Mikoto also followed. Kushina, why do you suddenly want to learn medical ninjutsu? Shin asked curiously. It's always good to have more skills. And if Mikoto gets injured, I can heal her. Kushina glanced at Mikoto. Mikoto rolled her eyes. So Kushina was hoping she'd get injured? Chapter 99, The Third Kazekage's Plan. Tailed beasts are just toys.
Shin and his team had just arrived at the medical tent when they heard a series of explosions.
What's going on? Is Suna attacking?
Shin used his mind's eye of Kagura to sense the situation.
It was indeed Suna. He was puzzled. Why were they attacking now? Had they received reinforcements? Tsunade emerged from the medical tent, followed by Konan. What's happening? Is it an enemy attack? Tsunade asked. Let's go see. Konan, stay here. Don't wander off.
Shin patted Konan's head.
Okay. Konan nodded obediently, though her eyes held a hint of disappointment. Shin wasn't worried about leaving Konan alone.
He had implanted his Mangekyo Sharingan abilities in her eyes with the transcription seal. He and Tsunade arrived at the edge of the Konoha encampment. Tsukumo Hatake was leading the Konoha shinobi in a standoff against the Suna forces.
What's going on? Why is Suna attacking?
Shin asked Jiraiya, who had recovered from his injuries. Our commander, Tsukumo, killed Chiyo's son and daughter-in-law, so she's here for revenge, Jiraiya explained.
Shin's expression turned odd. Chiyo's son and daughter-in-law? Weren't they Sasori's parents? So Sasori's parents died during the Second Shinobi World War. Tsukumo Hatake. I'll kill you. Chiyo glared at Tsukumo with pure hatred. If Ebizo wasn't holding her back, she would have charged at Tsukumo.
Tsukumo's expression remained neutral.
Killing enemy shinobi was part of his duty, he wouldn't hesitate.
The third Kazekage sighed. He hadn't wanted to attack Konoha now, but Chiyo had already mobilized the troops.
He had no choice but to go along with it. Chiyo's influence in Suna was almost equal to his.
Ebizo, take care of Orochimaru and Jiraiya. Chiyo, Tsunade is yours, try to keep your anger in check. The third Kazekage said, his voice serious. Although this attack was unplanned, he still had a strategy. Sister, once we defeat Konoha, you can do whatever you want with Tsukumo, Ebizo said, trying to appease Chiyo.
I know. I'll handle Tsunade. Chiyo turned away from Tsukumo, suppressing her rage.
She couldn't let her emotions control her.
Attack! The third Kazekage looked at the monk beside him. This was Bunpuku, the One-Tail's Jinchuriki. Bunpuku sighed.
He didn't want to kill, but he had to fight for Suna. He charged towards the Konoha shinobi, a layer of tailed beast chakra cloaking his body. The tailed beast cloak enhanced the Jinchuriki's strength, defense, and speed. Only those who were acknowledged by the tailed beast could use this ability.
Bunpuku had clearly earned Shikaku's approval. With the protection of the tailed beast cloak, the kunai and shuriken thrown by the Konoha shinobi couldn't harm Bunpuku. Ichibi, come out.
Bunpuku communicated with Shikaku in his mind, then let the tailed beast take over.
Shikaku's massive form appeared on the battlefield, causing fear among the Konoha shinobi. That damned Tanuki again, Kushina muttered, glaring at the beast. I'm surprised to see Shikaku here, Shin said. He had sealed Shikaku into Bunpuku with the four symbols seal. Shikaku shouldn't be able to break free on its own. He suspected Suna had broken the seal. He was right. Suna had spent a long time researching ways to forcibly break the four symbols seal. It wasn't a gentle release, Bunpuku had suffered. Attack! The third Kazekage, seeing Shikaku's appearance, immediately targeted Tsukumo. Magnet release, iron sand drizzle. He unleashed a torrent of iron sand, forming thousands of sunban that rained down on the Konoha shinobi. Tsukumo drew his white light chakra saber and deflected the sunban, then charged towards the Kazekage. His sword now had a special coating that negated the effects of magnet release. Ebizo also attacked, facing Orochimaru and Jiraiya alone. Orochimaru and Jiraiya were only at Quasi-Kage level. Ebizo could handle them both. Chiyo, following the Kazekage's plan, attacked Tsunade with her puppets, occasionally targeting other Konoha shinobi as well. These puppets are so annoying. Tsunade punched a puppet, destroying it, but another one immediately took its place. Tsukumo was occupied with the third Kazekage, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya with Ebizo, and Tsunade with Chiyo. And now Shikaku had appeared. Only Shin could handle it. Furthermore, Hanzo hadn't appeared yet. This was the third Kazekage's plan, to keep Konoha's strongest occupied while Hanzo led the AIM shinobi in a sneak attack from behind and destroy their supplies. Shikaku, haven't I beaten you up enough? Still baring your teeth at me? Shin looked at Shikaku, who clearly showed fear in its eyes. It wasn't completely unafraid of him. Shin had indeed given it a thorough beating last time. I'll kill you. Shikaku, feeling insulted, opened its maw and formed a tailed beast bomb. A tailed beast bomb? You can use that too? I thought you didn't have enough chakra. Shin was surprised. But it made sense. All tailed beasts could use tailed beast bombs. Just because Shikaku had less chakra than the others didn't mean it couldn't use it. But it was taking a while to charge. That was understandable, though. It was a powerful attack, capable of destroying an entire village. That was the destructive power of a tailed beast. That was why, even if someone was individually stronger than a tailed beast, their impact on the battlefield was less significant. For example, Hiruzen could defeat Shikaku, but Shikaku's destructive power was far greater. The yin and yang chakra mixed and compressed within Shikaku's mouth, then finally fired outwards. Shikaku felt a sense of satisfaction. It could finally kill this annoying brat. But it was too optimistic. As the tailed beast bomb approached, Shin used his Sharingan. The attack vanished before it could even reach him. After evolving into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, his abilities had become even stronger. Yamatsu Hirasaka consumed less chakra and was more potent. He could open portals at will. Tenmomai could now affect other objects and people, and the time rewind wasn't limited to 3 minutes anymore. Shin had experimented and found he could rewind time by an hour within a 100-meter radius. But the cost was immense. It would deplete all his ocular power and chakra. He could also choose to rewind the time of a single object or person, and the duration would be longer. The length of the rewind depended on how much chakra and ocular power he used. Perhaps with enough chakra and ocular power, he could even rewind time by 1,000 years. But that was just speculation. He had used Tenmomai on the tailed beast bomb, rewinding its time by 3 minutes. 3 minutes ago, the tailed beast bomb hadn't even been formed yet. So it simply vanished. Compared to its previous limitations, Tenmomai was far more versatile now. In a battle against a true powerhouse, he could use Tenmomai to negate their attacks. But for now, Shikaku was confused. It rarely used tailed beast bombs, but it didn't expect its attack to be completely nullified. It quickly realized that the human brat must have done something. But Tenmomai's ability was time manipulation, there was no trace of it. Shikaku couldn't understand what Shin had done. Boom! An explosion from the direction of the Konoha camp wiped the smile off Shin's face. So that's why Hanzo wasn't here. Seeing the flames rising from the Konoha camp, Shin understood Suna and Aim's strategy. He had known that Chiyo was seeking revenge for her son, but he hadn't thought much about Hanzo's absence. Chiyo's revenge had nothing to do with Amage Cure. They might be allies, but Hanzo wouldn't participate in a battle that offered no benefits to him. Shin had assumed Hanzo simply didn't want to get involved in Chiyo's personal vendetta. But it seemed the third Kazekage and Hanzo had another plan. Looks like I can't play with you anymore, Shikaku. Shin activated his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and took control of Shikaku. Shikaku's eyes turned into 3 Tomo Sharingan. With the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, tailed beasts were just toys. Even with Bunpuku as its Jinchuriki, Shin could easily control Shikaku. He glanced at Kushina and Makoto, who were fighting. They were doing well together. And with the transcription seal, he didn't have to worry too much about them. He left the battlefield and headed back to the Konoha camp. Konan was still there. Although she had the transcription seal, he didn't want her to get hurt. And he also had to deal with the AIM shinobi who were attacking the supply depot.
If they destroyed all the supplies, it would put Konoha at a disadvantage.
It could even lead to their defeat. He found Konan hiding in their tent. She was unharmed. "Konan, are you alright?" Shin asked.
Konan sighed in relief, then rushed towards Shin and hugged him. She had been terrified by the sounds of battle.
"I'm fine," she said, shaking her head. "That's good."
Shin took her hand and left the tent, his Kusanagi sword in his other hand.
There were no AIM shinobi here. They were all at the supply depot and the medical tent.
They knew what was most important:
destroying Konoha's supplies and killing their medics. Hanzo was personally leading the attack. Shin could see the giant salamander wreaking havoc. "Konan, are you scared?" Shin asked. "No." Konan shook her head firmly.
She had been scared when she was alone, but now that Shin was here, her fear vanished.
Shin smiled and led Konan towards the area with the most AIM shinobi.
He cut down everyone he encountered. Konan watched, her fear fading.
As a war orphan, she had seen death before. She was becoming desensitized to it. Chapter 100, Extracting Shikaku. Ice Release, Ice Age. Shin's hands flew through a series of hand seals.
An icy chill spread outwards, freezing the fleeing AIM shinobi and extinguishing the fires they had set.
Shin's control over ice release had improved significantly. He could now precisely control its range and targets. He was arguably the strongest ice release user in history. "Konan, are you cold?" Shin asked. Konan nodded, her face slightly red.
She was standing on ice, it felt like she was in a frozen wasteland. Shin activated his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and used Amaterasu. Black flames appeared, and he used Kagetsuchi to control them, preventing them from spreading. "Warm yourself by the fire," Shin said to Konan.
"There are black flames?" Konan was amazed.
She had never seen black flames before.
"Here you go." Shin didn't attack anymore. The entire camp was frozen. No AIM shinobi within its range could escape. Unfortunately, Hanzo wasn't there.
He must have escaped before Shin returned.
He must have sensed the danger. Shin hadn't harmed any of his allies, thanks to the mind's eye of Kagura.
Without it, he might have frozen his own comrades as well. On the other side of the battlefield, the third Kazekage watched the frozen Konoha camp in shock.
"Retreat!" He didn't hesitate. The Suna forces immediately withdrew. "Damn that old hag. I'll catch her this time. Kushina, Makoto, come help me." Tsunade yelled after defeating Chiyo's puppets. Kushina and Makoto, who had been busy fighting other Suna shinobi, immediately went to assist Tsunade. But even with their combined efforts, they couldn't capture Chiyo. However, they did manage to destroy her human puppet. She got away.
Puppet masters are so annoying.
Tsunade punched the remains of the puppet in frustration.
Chiyo controlled the puppets from a distance, while she herself remained hidden.
Tsunade hated that.
Chiyo was strong, but she was still a puppet master.
She wouldn't fight Tsunade directly. The Suna forces retreated, and Konoha didn't pursue. Tsukumo Hatake ordered them to return to camp. That was an incredible jutsu. I can't believe an 11-year-old can do that. Just how much chakra does that Shin kid have?
Jiraiya stared at the frozen camp in awe.
"Orochimaru, what are you looking at?" Orochimaru's eyes were fixed on Shikaku, the One-Tail. It was still under the control of the Sharingan. The Sharingan? Is the One-Tail being controlled by the Sharingan? Orochimaru frowned. There were no Uchiha on this battlefield. Well, there was Uchiha Makoto. He had almost forgotten about her. Could she be controlling Shikaku? He didn't believe it. He didn't think she was capable of that.
If it were Shin, it would be more believable.
But how could Shin have the Sharingan? That thing is under control.
"I'll try to seal it," Kushina said, looking at Shikaku. But Tsunade stopped her.
Don't. What if you fail and break Shin's control? Who will deal with the One Tail then? Kushina reluctantly backed down.
She couldn't even defeat the salamander, Shikaku was out of the question. They left Shikaku alone and returned to the camp, finding Shin and Konan warming themselves by the black flames.
Tsunade was curious about the black flames, but Kushina and Makoto already knew what they were. Makoto thought of the legendary Amaterasu flames, now used for a campfire.
It was a strange sight.
Shin stood up and extinguished the flames. Suna retreated?
Yes, they retreated.
Shin, deal with the One Tail outside. Make sure it doesn't cause any trouble, Tsunade said.
Okay. Just as Shin was about to leave, Tsukumo Hatake arrived.
Shin, can you undo your jutsu? Are you kidding me, Tsukumo-san? How can I undo a jutsu that's already been cast? Shin said, exasperated. Can't you melt the ice?
Our supplies are frozen.
I can't do that now.
Maybe when my control over ice release improves.
Shin said. He really couldn't do it. This is troublesome. Tsukumo frowned. Shin's ice was incredibly strong.
He had tried to cut it with his white light chakra saber, but it didn't even leave a mark.
How long will it take for the ice to melt naturally? Tsukumo asked. Shin should know. It might take half a month. There's no sun in the land of rain. Even under direct sunlight, it wouldn't melt easily. We can use fire release to melt it.
It'll just take some effort, Shin suggested.
That's our only option then. Tsukumo left to find some fire release users. Shin went to deal with Shikaku. He wasn't planning on sealing it back into Bunpuku.
Instead, he extracted Shikaku completely.
Bunpuku, of course, died the moment Shikaku was extracted. Even Uzumaki Jinchuriki couldn't survive having a tailed beast extracted. Shikaku, freed from Shin's control, glared at him angrily. Bunpuku was dead. Shikaku had a good impression of Bunpuku.
It had even acknowledged him to some extent. That was why it was angry about his death. That wraps up this part of What If Copy System in Naruto.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned.
Just a quick reminder, the story What If There Was a Different Luffy is going on hold soon as we have almost caught up with the author. So once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the next project should be here on the channel. I'm currently considering these 3 fanfics.
What if Ichigo awoke his true powers?
What if becoming a mangaka in One Piece world? What if Reborn as Gohan in future timeline? Let me know which one you'd like to see next by voting in the poll.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.